Today, we're going to be answering the question, how does Boyne use language to create a sense of misery in the Holocaust? The first thing that you will ever need to do, not just today, but any day that you answer an exam question, is highlight the key words in the question. By highlighting the key words, this will ensure that you're answering the question and you're giving the examiner exactly what they want to read. I know we haven't had much practice doing this before, so I'm going to pick out the keywords for you and tell you exactly what you need to do to answer those keywords. So the first keyword that we're going to look at and to highlight is the word how. Whenever anybody ever says how in an exam question, they will always be asking you to provide evidence. So, in this question, they're saying, how does Bruno use language to create a sense of misery in the Holocaust? Now, how he does that is you need to be picking out the language devices that he uses and saying the effect of those language devices. Okay, so in that we've already highlighted that the second keyword we need to be looking at is language. That is how you are going to get the top grades if you're using technical English language. So things like adjectives, repetition, connectives, ellipsis. If you want to get even higher marks, things like pathetic fallacy, they are going to get you into your level 7s that you're really wanting to be aiming for. Remember, your target grades are a minimum, okay? We want to be aiming for the highest. We want to be getting the best grades in year 7, don't we? Okay, so the third and final word that we are going to need to focus upon is misery. So you need to be showing how the language that he's using creates a miserable feel. So you're going to need to be picking out words with negative connotations. Now remember, the word connotations means what it makes you think of, okay? We're going to go over this in class, don't worry. So you need to be picking out words such as hated, noisy and impossible, because these show how miserable Shmuel's life is and how terrible it is, and showing that he's not having a good time. The next thing we're going to do is look at how you're actually going to structure your answer. So this means how you're going to write it. So last lesson I mentioned that we're going to use PQEEL. Now this is an easy structure that if you use well, which obviously I'm going to teach you, you will be able to use it into your GCSEs, and this will enable you to get A stars, which I know we should all be aiming for. So the first thing you need to do is explain your point. Now, this needs to directly answer the question. So the question is, how does Boyne use language to create a sense of misery of the Holocaust? So what you need to do is you need to say how he does that in one point. So you don't need to answer the whole question, you just need to say one way in which he does that. So remember, in the question, it said to look at the language that he uses, and it gave you some examples, didn't it? So it said things like using adjectives, repetition, connectives. So you need to be deciding, you need to pick one of those points and just say the sentence of it. So for example, one example of a point would be, Boyne uses repetition to create a sense of misery in the Holocaust. So that is your point. Then what you need to do is find a quote that supports your point, because for all the audience knows, or the examiner, whoever's reading it, you could have just made up that point. Boyne might not have used repetition. You need a quote to show that he is actually doing this and that you know exactly what you're talking about. So just find any quote that shows that he's using repetition. Then that is your quote complete. You can tick that off. Then what you need to do, and these bits are the bits that you're going to get the most marks for. So by explaining and talking about the effect, you are going to be well on your way to getting a level 6. So if you explain the quote, you need to show exactly what the writer is meaning and why he is doing that. For example, if you're using a quote where he's repeating the word hell. Okay, so we were talking about repetition. You found the quote, he said, Auschwitz was like hell, every day is hell, I'm living in hell. You need to explain what that word actually means and what it makes you think of. So you need to say, the word hell has connotations of fire, of unhappiness, of purgatory where nobody is happy. And so you're explaining why that specific word has been used and why it's been repeated. Then you need to go on and talk about the effect of that word. So you need to explain how that makes the audience or the reader feel. Are they going to think, if you're talking about hell all of the time and he's repeating the word hell, are they really going to think that everybody's having a good time, or are they going to think that it's a completely negative atmosphere? So an example of an effect sentence would be, the reader would feel sorry for Shmuel because he had been living in these terrible conditions. Okay, so that is effect complete as well. So then the last thing you need to do in this paragraph is talk about the link. So when I say link, I mean how it relates to the main question. So what you need to ensure is that in this paragraph, you've actually been answering what the examiner wants you to say. Your link is going to be exactly the same as your point. So you'll say something like, therefore, it is clear that Boyne is creating a sense of misery through his use of repetition. It's important to include this link question because it shows that you're answering the question. So that is all you need to do to explain PQEEL. On average, in your essay, you're going to need to do about 4 of those paragraphs, all with the same structure. So, for example, one paragraph is going to be on repetition and how he uses repetition to show misery. Another paragraph is going to be on ellipsis and how he uses ellipsis to show misery. And then, like I said before, if some of you want to be going for the higher marks and really to be going up there, you can have a paragraph on how he uses pathetic fallacy to create a sense of misery. That is how you answer the question.